One Liberal is out, while another secures more support in the race to replace Justin Trudeau. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Those in the running to replace Justin Trudeau as leader of the Liberal Party are facing another deadline. Today is the final day to register as a Liberal supporter in order to be able to vote in the Liberal leadership race. But one candidate won't be in that race. Ottawa area Liberal MP Chandra Arya says he's out. He's been told by the Liberal Party that he is not allowed to run for the leadership of the party. There's been no explanation for that decision, although Arya probably didn't help his cause when he said he didn't speak French. In a posting on social media, Arya said the decision to bar him from the race, quote, raises significant questions about the legitimacy of the leadership race and, by extension, the legitimacy of the next Prime Minister of Canada. The decision to exclude Arya also prompted a video post from another surprise candidate in this race, Ruby Dalla. Ruby Dalla hasn't been a member of Parliament since 2011, but threw her hat in the ring at the last minute, saying she wants to be the first Prime Minister of Canada from the Indo-Canadian community.
I am sure that many of his supporters across the country are very disappointed. I know that they have been working very hard, signing up members all across our great country. And to all of the supporters, I say to you that in me, you have a very strong voice, a voice that is ready to fight for you, that is ready to stand up for you, and a voice that is going to ensure that your issues are brought to the forefront. The time is very short. If you have not signed up, we have until tomorrow, January the 27th. And if you have signed up, please connect with us because we need your vote and your support to elect and to make history for the very first time and have the first Canadian Prime Minister from the South Asian and Indo-Canadian community.
While the Liberal Party is excluding Chandra Arya from the leadership contest, Mark Carney, the former central banker, keeps racking up endorsements from current and former Trudeau cabinet ministers. Newfoundland Liberal MP Seamus O'Regan, a former cabinet minister, said Canadians want change and fresh ideas, and that's why he's backing Mark Carney.
There are hundreds of reasons why Mark Carney should be the next leader of the Liberal Party of Canada and our next Prime Minister. He is experienced on the world stage. He is laser focused on the economy. He is new to elected politics, but he is not new to the issues. In fact, he has been on the front lines of the economy and the environment, both here at home and around the world. He's a good, decent, and optimistic Canadian, and a steady hand when we need one. And he is not here for the show. He's here to do the job. I'll be voting for Mark Carney.
Another Liberal heavy hitter supporting Mark Carney is the current Industry Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, meaning two top Quebec cabinet ministers are supporting Mark Carney, Champagne and Mélanie Joly, instead of their longtime cabinet colleague, Chrystia Freeland. And also backing Mark Carney is Liberal cabinet minister, Anita Anand.
And we agree that Mark Carney is the leader that Canada needs. I worked with Mark during the global financial crisis almost 20 years ago, and I saw at that time that Mark has the ability to steer Canada during very difficult times and to ensure that Canada comes out on top. So join us in supporting Mark Carney for leader of the Liberal Party and Prime Minister of Canada.
But Chrystia Freeland does have some cabinet support. One of her backers is the Federal Minister of Health, Mark Holland.
Well, for me, Christia's record of achievement speaks for itself. This is somebody who in her private life was a journalist and a managing editor, took on Putin. The KGB has a file about, how one determined person can change so much, and it's on her. And I've seen that same force and that same will as she fought for Canadians during NAFTA and other issues. So for me, who she is, her character makes it an easy choice.
Chrystia Freeland may be trailing Mark Carney in endorsements from Trudeau-era cabinet ministers, but that hasn't stopped her from issuing a couple of challenges to her rivals. She has called for the party to have 4 leadership debates, 2 in French and 2 in English, and has said they should be held as soon as possible. And she has also demanded that all leadership candidates commit to running for the Liberals as candidates in the next federal election.
This is an important contest. We are choosing the next leader of the Liberal Party. That means that we're choosing the next Prime Minister of Canada. It's really important to give all Canadians a chance to see the candidates in action, to hear what they have to say, to hear what they have to offer Canadians.
The other candidates still in the race to replace Justin Trudeau as the Liberal Party's next leader are MPs Karina Gould and Yami Batiste, along with former Liberal MP and businessman Frank Baylis. The winner will be announced March 9th. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. And this is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
It's been 1 week since Donald Trump was sworn in as President of the United States, and the world got a taste of how Donald Trump might use tariffs or the threat of tariffs to get his way. The country of Colombia found itself in the American president's crosshairs over the weekend after that country's president, Gustavo Petro, rejected 2 Colombia-bound U.S. military aircraft that were carrying migrants who were in the United States illegally. President Petro accused Trump of not treating the migrants with dignity during their deportation. That's when Trump threatened Colombia with a 25% tariff, a tariff that would be raised to 50% within a week. Colombia then said it would impose 25% tariffs of its own on American exports to Colombia. And the new U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, authorized visa restrictions on Colombian government officials and their families. CNN's Rafael Romo has more.
We're talking about a lot of agricultural products, bananas, a lot of tropical fruits that we consume in the United States that come from Colombia. And so if you start seeing the beginning of a trade war between the 2 countries, is going to affect not only Colombia as a producer, but also a lot of consumers here in the United States. Now, when you look at this whole issue, you need to look at the numbers. Facts first. During its first week in office, the Trump administration has arrested just over 1,400 undocumented immigrants. At least those are the figures that were publicly released by authorities on January 23rd, 24th, and 25th. During the same period, Fred, an additional 1,243 undocumented migrants already detained in jails around the country have been identified for removal. But U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement data shows the total of removals for last year was over 271,000, which means during President Biden's last year, the average was more than 5,000 deportations per week compared to 2,600 this past week.
Last night, the White House announced that the government of Colombia had agreed to all of President Trump's demands. President Trump's first week back in office dominated the Sunday political talk shows in the United States. Trump's new so-called border czar, Tom Homan, was on This Week on ABC and said the southern U.S. border is closed and millions face deportation.
But you can see the numbers steadily increase, the number of arrests nationwide as we open up the aperture. Right now it's concentrating public safety threats, national security threats. That's a smaller population. So we're going to do this on priority base, as President Trump's promised, but as that aperture opens, there'll be more arrests nationwide.
Holman would go on to say anyone who entered the United States illegally is now a target.
If you're in the country illegally, you're on the table. Because it's not okay to, violate laws of this country. You got to remember, every time you enter this country illegally, you violated a crime under Title 8, United States Code 1325. It's a crime. So if you're in the country illegally, you got a problem. And that's why I'm hoping those who are in the country illegally, who have not been ordered removed by the federal judge, should leave.
The Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, made an appearance on Face the Nation on CBS, where he was asked how the Trump administration plans to lower consumer prices, a major Trump campaign promise.
You were talking about bacon on the campaign trail.
Of course. of course.
Those things, when do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives?
Well, Margaret, how does bacon get to the grocery store? It comes on trucks that are fueled by diesel fuel. If the diesel is way too expensive, the bacon's going to become more expensive. How do we grow the bacon? Our farmers need energy to produce it. So if we lower energy prices, we are going to see lower prices for consumers, and that is what we're trying to fight for.
Well, the flurry of executive orders, most of them weren't about the economy. Many of them
were, though, Margared. We had, I think we've taken
promise
over
of tariffs by February 1st.
We've taken over 200 executive actions, some executive orders, other executive actions. Again, this is in less than a week, and a lot of them were focused on the economy, bringing investment into our country and lowering energy prices.
And over on NBC's Meet the Press, longtime Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said he wasn't in favor of Trump's blanket pardons for people who took part in the events of January 6th on the U.S. Capitol.
But I fear that you will get more violence. Pardoning the people who went into the Capitol and beat up a police officer violently, I think was a mistake because it seems to suggest that's an okay thing to do. Kamala Harris wanted to raise bail money for people burning down Minneapolis. You know, Biden pardoned half his family going out the door. I think most Americans, if this continues, to see this as an abuse of the pardon power, that we'll revisit the pardon power of the president if this continues. But as to pardoning violent people who beat up cops, I think that's a mistake.
Also, over the weekend, the new U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, halted spending on most existing foreign aid. That pause is set to be in place for the next 90 days, and that order also applies to funding for military aid to Ukraine. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. Our Newsday panel is still ahead. Also bring you up to date on a tough day for the stock market, particularly AI stocks because of news out of China. David Smith has some information about that. He'll tell us more. It's all just ahead. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Here with David Smith on a Monday, and we are following all the ins and outs, David, of the Liberal leadership race. Who's in, who's out, one out so far. And today, the deadline for people to sign up to be, quote unquote, a liberal supporter, and have the ability to vote in the Liberal leadership race, and all to be announced on March 9th. Winner of the Liberal leadership race. Kind of seen, I think, as a two-person race right now. Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland, I think, are considered to be the front runners, and a lot of the people we talk to around here think Mark Carney probably has the edge over Chrystia Freeland right now. But Chrystia Freeland is out with a news release today talking about Trump and tariffs, and it's kind of a bullet point plan. If I was the Liberal leader, if I was the Prime Minister, this is how I would respond, and this is what I think the Canadian government should be doing to deal with the Trump tariff threat. Right at the top of the list, Canada must immediately publish a detailed dollar-for-dollar retaliation list for consultation. Quote, being smart means retaliating where it hurts. If President Trump imposes 25% tariffs, our counterpunch must be dollar for dollar. It must be precise and painfully targeted. Florida orange growers, Wisconsin dairy farmers, Michigan dishwasher manufacturers, and much more. That's similar to an opinion piece that she had in the Washington Post. It was last week or the week before. Immediately convene, she says, an international summit. Form an international coalition to coordinate a joint response. The day Chrystia is sworn in as Prime Minister, she would sit down with the leaders of Mexico, Denmark, Panama, and the President of the European Union. So working in the whole Greenland angle there on the Panama Canal. Canada must, on the first day of any tariffs imposed, direct all federal government agencies to stop the purchase of any goods from U.S. companies, with exceptions only where national security is concerned, and buy Canadian. Prohibit American companies from bidding on Canadian federal procurement, excluding national defense. Prioritize companies or industries in federal procurement, for example, Bombardier and other Canadian aerospace firms. And ironclad commitments to work with our artists and creators to defend Canada's vibrant and diverse cultural sector. From Donald Trump's billionaire buddies, including safeguard the cultural exemption in NAFTA, as Chrystia Freeland did during the Trump administration. So that's from the Freeland campaign right now, as we continue to monitor the latest in the Liberal leadership race. We're also watching the markets today. There's a lot of red on the markets. The only kind of bright spot is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is up just a little bit, but it's in positive territory. Everything is deep in the red, and it's really a NASDAQ-led sell-off, and really one stock is involved there, and that's NVIDIA, the chip maker, down about 16% today. And David, that's all about AI and something in China called DeepSeek. Why is this rattled U.S. tech stocks in the AI space?
Yeah, it's a really interesting development, and it's one people have been watching for a while. Essentially, DeepSeek is a AI platform comparable to OpenAI's ChatGPT. So it's a text-based generative AI platform. It's an app you can download. It's been developed by a Chinese startup. But the reason it's routing the American stock market is because the company that produced it says it only cost a few $1 million to develop and to power, whereas the development of ChatGPT is in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. So you've got a company in China, a startup, without access to the top-of-the-line chips that NVIDIA makes because they are embargoed. Chinese companies cannot purchase the most powerful AI chips. Nonetheless, this company has been able to develop an app that works the same as ChatGPT and only costs a few $1 million to power. The analogy I could give you for that is as if a startup company has created a laptop that can do everything the MacBook can do, but it only costs $200, not $2,000. It's really remarkable.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. So the NASDAQ is down about 3% on that news, down 624 points right now. Canadian stock market is down, although not to that extent. We have $72 oil today, and the Canadian dollar trading at 69.50 cents US. Newsday panel just ahead on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio. The Newsday panel.
Yes, it is time for our Monday Newsday panel. Neil Brody is back, longtime conservative strategist, used to work in the Harper PMO. How are you today?
Not too bad, Rob. How's your day?
I'm good. A little windy, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm strapped down. Ashton Arsenault is a partner at Crestview Strategy. How are you, Ashton? Good to hear from you again.
I'm well, Rob. Good to be here.
Oh, that's good. So let's talk about all the twists and turns in the Liberal leadership race. I never really gave Chandra Arya a great shot at becoming the next leader of the Liberal Party or the next Prime Minister of Canada. He was kind of a no-name MP from the National Capital Region, from a suburb of Ottawa called Nepean, but he's out, and nobody really knows why. What do you think is going on there? What do you think? What was behind that decision, Neil?
I have as much insight into this as you do, Rob. I know some articles have been written about his attachment to the Indian government, and I know there's Canadian politics. There's ins and outs between Indians and Sikhs somehow. I don't really understand it, but other people do. He might have been saying some things that the party didn't like. He may have had some, untoward fundraising. Who knows? But the point is, we have no idea. And I don't know if we ever will. Internal party stuff generally stays internal party stuff. But it sounds like he's a guy who could have delivered 5, 6, 7 ridings to an eventual winner. So he there was a role for him to play in the leadership, and it's a shame he's out.
Okay, interesting. Ashton, any insight into this particular development?
Yeah, I think Neil's right. I don't think we'll ever actually get an honest answer as to what went down. I was going to raise the same sort of issue that some whispers have been made about that Neil brought to the surface, and also, some questions around potential fundraising sources. We'll never know at the end of the day. I mean, it could also be as simple as something as, Mr. Arya came out very publicly and declared that the Liberal Party leader need not know French, which I thought was quite interesting. Maybe they didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, but beyond those things, I have as much information as anybody else.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and maybe someday we'll find out why that was the case. But it is interesting as well that he says, well, this throws the whole race into question. You have to question the legitimacy of the next Liberal leader, and you have to question the legitimacy because that person will become the next Prime Minister of Canada. So it's not as though he's leaving on great terms from this Liberal leadership race. All right, on endorsements. I mean, first of all, generally speaking, how important are these endorsements from cabinet ministers? Are they important at all? What would you say, Neil?
They are important. Their importance are as quote unquote regional organizers for the leadership candidates. If it's very easy for a leadership candidate to get a whole bunch of votes, say in Montreal, but you need to win all the ridings across. It's kind of like a general election. You have to win all the ridings, as many ridings as you can across Canada. So you can't just have your hometown support, sign up, 2 million people from the cemeteries of Montreal and win that way. You need support from across Canada. So as you get ministers or other caucus members across Canada on your team, then you can, as a leadership candidate, download some of the organizing responsibility to them and some of the fundraising responsibility to them. I mean, I'm sure that's part of the quid pro quo of support is, you'll deliver me, X number of ridings and $100,000 in donations or $200,000 in donations or whatever it happens to be.
Okay.
I mean, that's the real value, and it's just general legitimacy in the eyes of Canadians helps as well.
Okay. What do you think on the importance of endorsements? How important are they in a race like this, in your opinion, Ashton?
Yeah, I think during general elections, they're basically garbage. Leadership endorsements are a very different beast for all of the reasons that Neil just raised. And, I think you think about these leadership races, they are tremendously difficult to poll. I think it'd be fair to conclude that at least at this point, Mark Carney seems like he's the favorite. He seems to have the juice, the organizational prowess. But let me just sort of expose a little further an example that Neil was hitting on. I think it's very important because when you have these endorsements, you have, presumably that individual's EDA and those organizational capabilities that come with that. So under the leadership rules, right, let's just use Toronto Centre and Calgary Foothills, right? They're each worth 100 points. One of those will probably have about 2,000 supporters, and the other will probably only, just have a few. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
They're each worth 100 points, right? So, you have to cast a large net here.
Okay. So when you see that François-Philippe Champagne and Melanie Joly have both endorsed Mark Carney and not their cabinet colleague, Chrystia Freeland, and Anita Anand, I was kind of surprised. Anita Anand, who spoke so nicely about Chrystia Freeland when Chrystia Freeland resigned as the finance minister. I mean, not only did they seem to be colleagues, they seem to be pretty close friends as well. For her to come out and say, well, I'm backing Mark Carney and not Chrystia Freeland, I memean, is that evidence that Mark Carney has the edge in this? He's winning this thing right now, Neil? What would you say?
Yeah, listen, I don't know, a week ago or so to 10 days ago, I said it's Mark Carney's to lose.
Right.
It definitely is Mark Carney's to lose. Like, I didn't think Team Trudeau would be so blatantly behind Mark Carney. It's obvious the Trudeau machine is pushing for Mark Carney to succeed Mr. Trudeau. It's not, if there's going to be a Mark Carney government, there are certainly a number of incumbent ministers who would like to continue being ministers for however long that means.
Right.
So you might as well throw your hat into the ring behind Mr. Carney. And I still, we've talked about this before. Ms. Freeland, I'm not sure how many friends she had in caucus or in cabinet. And you have to realize that whoever's butt you kick on the way up, you have to kiss those same butts on the way down. And I don't think she remembered that.
Right. Be nice to them on the way up. You may need them on the way down. Okay. But remember, she's the anti-establishment candidate, everybody. Let's remember.
They all are.
Let's remember that. Mark Carney's the outsider, and Chrystia Freeland's going up against the establishment. But this is Mark Carney's race to lose, Neil says. You would agree with that, Ashton?
I would. I don't think we should discount, obviously, the potential for some hurt feelings around how Freeland left. I mean, like it or not, she did leave the government in a bit of a lurch. And so I think some of that sting might be carrying over. I would love to hear an argument at this point in time about how Mark Carney isn't the PMO's preferred candidate. I think it's pretty clear, if not transparent, that he is. How all of that came to be, I don't know, but he is.
Okay. Be right back. Talk a little bit about the polls. And in Ontario, Doug Ford is headed to the polls as well. The snap election. Ontario will be in an election campaign as of Wednesday. I'm Rob Snow. It's our Newsday panel. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with our Newsday panelist, Neil Brody, longtime conservative strategist, used to work on the Harper PMO, and Ashton Arsenault is a partner at Crestview Strategy. So let's talk about the polls. I would point out on social media, there are pollsters yelling at one another on social media. My poll is accurate. No, your poll is garbage. Like, this is actually happening now because there have been a couple of polls that would seem to suggest a bounce, if not a miraculous recovery for the political fortunes of the Liberal Party. We'll see what comes of the polls. But here's what I've been thinking, okay? Two big things have happened directly tied to the political fortunes of the Liberal Party. An unpopular leader in Justin Trudeau, he has one foot out the door, and then an unpopular policy in the carbon tax that has one foot in the grave. So given Mr. Trudeau's pending departure, and it looks like they all can't backtrack on the carbon tax fast enough, how shocked would you be if you saw a bump for the federal Liberals in the polls? Ashton?
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever to see a bit of a leadership bump in the polls. So, look, I don't think it'll be enough for them to form government or prevent a majority. I'm not saying anything like that. But maybe second place gets back on the table, and that's awfully important. So the Bloc Québécois right now seems to be holding down second place in terms of seats because the Liberals and the NDP are basically cannibalizing each other, racing towards the bottom. And perhaps a new leader can, in fact, change that. And the one thing about leadership races is it does bring ears and eyeballs to brands, and it does have an impact, right? You're seeing it all the time. So I think the bigger question here is, whether or not any leadership bump will be able to hold throughout an election. So the main contenders are sort of doing their darndest, like you said, Rob, to distance themselves from what everybody sort of views as a sinking ship, contorting themselves and walking things back that they were all for merely weeks ago in some cases. So, long-term problem, I think Canadians are going to see through that in a general election, and I think the individual in charge will be punished accordingly. Can they go from fourth place to second place or maybe even to third place? Yeah, it's possible.
All right, interesting. What do you think, Neil? How shocked would you be to see a bump for the Liberals in the polls?
Well, I've learned over the years not to disagree with Ashton. He's a smart cookie, but I have to be in the same column as him, not shocked. In the stock market world, there's a phenomenon called the dead cat bounce. It's when its stock falls and falls and falls, and then it gets to a certain point where people think, oh, it's a good time to buy, and they buy, and the price goes up for a bit. But then the underlying fundamentals of the stock show themselves, and the bottom falls out of the stock, and it tanks. Canadian investors in BlackBerry, Canadian investors in Nortel have seen this phenomenon. There's some buzz around the party, as you said, Rob, right now. Liberals are moderately excited about getting rid of Mr. Trudeau. They may not be necessarily excited about the candidates to replace him, but they're excited that there's something going on in the party. It's in the newspaper, it's on the news, it's in social media. So sure, you'll get a bounce. But ultimately, the Liberal Party has to prove to Canadians it's fundamentally changed its direction to see any long-term entrenched gains in the public opinion poll.
All right. When we come back, just wanted to do a quick segment on the polls. When we come back, one of the big political stories of the year is going to be the Ontario provincial election. Doug Ford confirmed it on Friday. Wednesday will be the day the election campaign begins. He's got a big lead in the polls. He says, I need a mandate, even though the voters gave him a mandate just 2 years ago. Could it all backfire on him? Could this be 1990 Ontario all over again? Ray Days are coming back. Ray Days. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know It's News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Here with our Newsday panelists, Neil Brody and Ashton Arsenault. Okay, Ashton, what do you think of Doug Ford's decision, his justification for calling a snap election? I need a mandate. I need a new mandate from the voters to deal with Trump. What do you think of that, first of all?
Yeah, look, when you're in a position to win, you don't wait. And everything we are seeing suggests that he is in a position to win. Look, it's Doug Ford's election to lose. The poll I last saw actually had him improving his seat count in the legislature if that number holds at 46%. That's rather impressive at the end of the day. I mean, third time around and gaining. You don't actually see that a lot in Canadian politics, and you got to strike when the iron's hot. So, I think it's appropriate. Others will quibble with it. There's always people who quibble around snap elections, but I think he's nicely framed out why he's seeking the mandate that he's seeking. And, he's aided tremendously by perpetually weak opposition in Ontario, and their loss is his gain.
Yeah, weak and I would say split opposition in Ontario. I mean, the Liberals in Ontario and the Democrats are they're fishing in the same pond, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would. You have a Liberal leader in Bonnie Crombie that, how long now? At least over 6 months. I can't remember when she was elected. No seat in the legislature. Basically seems like a passing gig. Marit Stiles not picking up any sort of leverage or momentum at all. And yeah, I don't know if it's a combination of not being up to the job or, the immense folksy charm of Doug Ford, but it looks like, again, it's his to lose, and I'd be shocked at any other outcome.
Okay. What do you think about his justification for calling this election in the first place? I need a mandate from the people. The Trump tariffs could really hurt, and I need a mandate from the people. Neil?
Listen, it's a great political line. It's as good a line as you're going to come up with to go to an election right now. I'm really not too sure why an election should be called right now. Generally, in the mid-'90s, we saw Prime Minister Chrétien call an early election when he had a solid base of support, so it's not unprecedented. Could it backfire? Yeah, it could, but I don't think it will. I have to go along with Ashton again. There's no viable opposition party. Ontarians don't appear to be sick of the Doug Ford government. Aside from some partisan rhetoric from the NDP and the Liberals, Ontario is building roads, building hospitals. Healthcare needs to be worked on, but that's not specific to Ontario. That's a Canada-wide thing. There's no
people are getting $200, Neil.
There's
people
no
are getting $200
scandals. And like Ashton said, Bonnie Crombie's been, whatever her name is, has been leader of the Liberal Party for a number of months now. She doesn't have a seat in the House of Commons. That's a good time to go around the province and drum up support for your party, but I don't know what she's been doing for the last, whatever it is, 6, 7, 8 months. But she certainly hasn't been doing that. And unfortunately, both the Liberals and the Ontario NDP are being sideswiped by their federal counterparts. The Liberal brand in Ontario is done. The Liberal brand federally is kind of done, and same with the NDP. So it's I don't see how Mr. Ford could lose this at all.
And also, Ashton, I mean, the Ford PCs have been spending a lot of money likening Bonnie Crombie to Justin Trudeau. Like, she's a tax and spend liberal, loves the carbon tax just like Justin Trudeau. So they've spent money hand over fist to basically define the Ontario Liberal leader before she's had a chance to even get out there and tell her own story, really.
100%. And I have said this for the past few months. I truly believe it would have been malpractice on the part of Doug Ford and anybody else in the Doug Ford universe advising on the campaign to not get in front of a federal election. I thought it would have been just a tremendous shortcoming in terms of strategy. Justin Trudeau being the opposition muse is, I think, exceptionally compelling. And, throughout history, there's always this sort of counterweight in Ontario versus what's happening in Ottawa. It's unusual. It happens sometimes where they're both sort of voting on the same sheet, but normally they counteract.
What are they all going to do when they don't have Justin Trudeau to kick around anymore? Okay. We'll wrap it up there for this week. Good to hear from everyone on a windy day in the nation's capital. Neil and Ashton, we'll speak soon. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. Have a good day, Ashton.
Neil Brody, longtime conservative strategist, once worked in the Harper PMO. Ashton Arsenault, partner at Crestview Strategy. I'm Rob Snow. Talk back just ahead. First one of the week. Looking forward to hearing from you today on our topics. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talk Back. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion about the big issues of the day. And it's a Monday grab bag of topics today as we ease our way back into another work week around here. We want to talk about Trump and tariffs in Canada. There's the Liberal leadership race, what we're hearing from some of the candidates, what it could mean for the next election, the potential for a Liberal comeback. And beer and wine in corner stores, grocery stores, big box stores. That's a big news story in Ontario today. Our call-in line is 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. So let's start with Trump and tariffs and all the latest developments here. Get your take on something. What do you think Donald Trump really wants when he threatens Canada and other countries with tariffs? What is he really after? For example, do you think it would make a big difference to Donald Trump if Canada spent more on things like border security and national defense? Or do you think it's more likely that Canada is just going to have to live with the threat of tariffs as long as Donald Trump is president of the United States, no matter what Canada does? I'd be curious to know how you would answer these questions. What way are you leaning on the issue of tariffs right now? I mean, Trump has said tariffs could be coming to Canada as soon as February 1st. And a lot of Canadian political leaders seem to believe him. And they're getting their lists ready and they're checking it twice and they're getting ready to retaliate if those tariffs do come into effect Saturday of this week. But do you think Donald Trump means it when he says, Canada, you're getting 25% tariffs on February 1st? Or do you think he's just using that tariff threat as leverage for whatever he happens to want to do on any particular day. Some people are starting to wonder. For example, yesterday's events involving Colombia, the country Colombia, very interesting. I mean, who had this on the bingo card? A trade dust-up featuring Colombia and the United States. And, I guess Colombia has a very left-wing president who doesn't like Donald Trump, and I guess the feeling is mutual, and the president of Colombia ordered that planes that were carrying illegal immigrants, planes from the United States carrying those people back to Colombia, they wouldn't be allowed to land. They wouldn't be allowed to land. And Trump's response was, okay, then you're getting 25% tariffs. And if you don't do what we want, we're going to increase those tariffs to 50% within a week. And so I guess by late last night, everything had been settled to the satisfaction of the new American administration. So we were just wondering, and I mean, we'd like to know what you think. We were just wondering if that's a sign that Trump will always use the threat of tariffs on any issue with any country, not just whatever, well, Canada needs to spend more on defense or Canada needs to do more to secure the border. That the threat of tariffs will always be there for Donald Trump, no matter the issue. And Canada just has to learn to dance to whatever Trump's tune happens to be on any particular day. What do you think? Really like to know. 1-833-668-2577 on Trump and tariffs. 1-833-668-2577. Also in the mix today, do you think the federal Liberals could make a comeback with some new policies and a new leader of the Liberal Party? Let's face it, the Liberals they've really been struggling in the polls for the better part of 2 years now. When the experts compile an average of all the polls that have been out recently, as they do, for example, at 338canada.com, the average polling result has been Conservatives 45, Liberals 22, NDP 18. That's the average of all the recent polls. But now Justin Trudeau has one foot out the door. Stepping down as Liberal leader, won't be the Prime Minister of Canada much longer, won't lead them into the next election. Going to be a new Liberal leader. Maybe it's Mark Carney, maybe it's Chrystia Freeland, maybe it's somebody else. A lot of the people we talk to on this show think it's going to be Mark Carney. But other than, a different face, a big controversial policy is also being thrown overboard by these Liberal leadership contenders, and that's the carbon tax. Some are saying, well, carbon tax needs to be canceled. Others are saying, well, it needs to be replaced. And still others are saying that at the very least, the planned increase to the carbon tax for April 1st, at the very least, that needs to be put on hold. So when you think about some of the stuff that's been dragging down the Liberals, one of them is the leader. A lot of people are just sick and tired of Justin Trudeau, and now he's leaving. A lot of the voters don't like the carbon tax. And it sounds as though that's the next thing to go. And the next Liberal leader is going to cancel the carbon tax. So here's a question for you today. If there's no Justin Trudeau leading the Liberals, and there's no carbon tax anymore, does that set the stage for a Liberal comeback? What do you think? Or are the Conservatives, they're the agents of change, and when you look at the polls, they're just too far ahead? Why don't we start there for today? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback. It's Monday. I'm Rob Snow. I'm here with David Smith. We'd love to hear from you. If you're a first-time caller, just mention that to our call screener. We will make your call a priority, and we look forward to hearing from you today on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Monday mixed bag of topics. What do you think Donald Trump really wants to see from countries like Canada and other countries when he makes threats about hitting countries with tariffs? What do you think he really wants? And do you think the federal Liberals could make a comeback, be competitive in the next election? Because Justin Trudeau's on his way out and they might ditch the carbon tax. 1-833-668-2577. Let's get to Steve up first for this week on Talkback. Hello, Steve.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on the Colombia thing. If I'm in the United States illegally and they go to send me back, does the government of Canada say, no, that guy's annoying, you keep him? Because some of the people going back to Colombia are known MS-13 gang members. And for the Colombian government to say, no, we're not going to accept Colombian nationals, I don't understand how that even works in terms of any kind of international agreement regarding immigration. Because if you're in a country illegally, I mean, Biden and Obama sent people back.
Sure,
so is it because it's Trump? Suddenly, you've crossed the line. We're not going to take them. I don't understand that one. Why would it take a threat of a tariff for you to do something?
Yeah, I guess to my point today, why was that kind of his default position? Okay, tariffs. I'm going to hit you with tariffs then.
I don't know what else you would use. He can't send in the army. He can't force a plane. He can't send in F-16s and bring in escorts that way. I'm not even sure how you're even allowed to even bring in a plane anyway without permission. But regardless, it's not the first time America has violated. Remember when they went after Obama, they went into Pakistan. They didn't tell the Pakistani people for fear it would get out. But regardless, for the tariffs, I'll finish with this. I remember during the campaign of 2016, Hillary said he wants to blow up NAFTA. We'll lose 3.5 million jobs. Nobody had, he did it in 6 months when everyone thought it couldn't be done. But the bottom line is, my understanding was, you had a 6 months window before you could make a change.
I guess what we've been hearing, Steve, and one of the reasons that we wanted to bring this up today is because, well, why don't we just spend more on national defense, which we probably should be doing anyway? Why don't we spend more securing the border? This is what Trump says he wants us to do, and we can avoid the tariffs. Is that true? Or could something else come along and all of a sudden the tariff threat is going to be back? Maybe the tariff threat is always going to be there.
What I'm asking, though, is I thought you had to give 6 months' notice to make a change. Was that not part of the new USMCA?
Well, the USMCA is supposed to be up for the USMCA is not supposed to be up for review until 2026, which is more than 6 months from now.
You can't just arbitrarily make a change. You have to give 6 months' notice. That was my understanding, or I understood it wrong.
Does it sound like that matters to him?
Right, but then it goes before some sort of tribunal that says, okay, these tariffs are illegal, so you got to give the money back.
We're not really getting at the issue here, so I'm going to move along. Let me go to Bill. Let's go to Bill in Ayr, Ontario. Bill, hi, Bill. You're on the air. Hi there.
How are you this morning?
I'm good, Bill. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind? What's your opinion?
The tariffs. I've got a friend in South Carolina that calls me all the time. They're always listening to or always watching the news on the television. And she called me to have me hear what Trump was saying about Canada on the news network. He said, the reason I'm coming up with these tariffs is because Canada doesn't play nice. Now, this is exactly what I heard from him himself. Canada doesn't play nice, and they don't want anything to do with becoming another state. So he says that's why I'm going ahead with the tariffs. Now, those are words that came right out of his mouth.
Yeah, we played that. That was in his speech to the World Economic Forum, when he made a speech last week to the World Economic Forum.
Okay.
Yeah. And what do you think of that? What do you think of those claims from the American president?
What, that we don't play nice?
Yeah, that we don't play nice. And if we want to avoid the tariffs, all we need to do is become the 51st state.
Pretty much, yeah.
You think we don't play nice and we should become the 51st state? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think that at all.
Okay.
I mean, Canada is Canada, and the United States is the United States. And right now it's being ruled by a bully.
Right. So do you think it would matter, because originally the demands were, well, they've got to do something about the border, too much illegal immigration, too much illegal drug activity going across the border, and they're getting a free ride on national defense. They have to spend more on defense. Do you think this tariff threat would go away if Canada did those things, or would the tariff threat remain?
I think the tariff threat will remain because he wants Canada.
No matter what we do?
Pretty much.
Okay. Bill in Ayr, Ontario, thank you for your call. We will stop here. We're underway now. It's Talkback on a Monday. I'm Rob Snow, here with David Smith. It's News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now. Hello. 1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, Monday mixed bag today. What do you think Donald Trump really wants from Canada, from other countries, when he makes the threat of tariffs? And do you think the federal Liberals could make a comeback? They've been down on the polls for pretty much 2 years, but do you think they could make a comeback because of Justin Trudeau's resignation, and because they sound like they're getting ready to drop a very unpopular policy in the carbon tax? 1-833-668-2577. Up next is Peter calling from Halifax. Hello, Peter. You're on the air.
Rob.
Offer your opinion, please. Hi there.
Thank you. Well, I think we should fight fire with fire. I think, as a matter of fact, I think the best thing that for us to do is to renationalize our railroads, and we should kick ExxonMobil out of the oil sands. And we should force Tim Hortons to find a Canadian owner. And I think Microsoft should be kicked out of our schools. And McDonald's, same thing. They should, any McDonald's operating in Canada, the franchise should be, and profits should be directed only to Canada.
Okay. Well, Tim Hortons are, they're locally owned by franchisees.
No,
right? People in your own community,
facetious,
right?
Rob.
Okay.
We are a Canadian, an American state. If you don't control your own transportation, of goods, if you don't control your own education system, if you don't control your own energy resources, if you don't control your major consumer outlets, what do you control? You know what Canada controls? Where we make most of our money from the taxpayers, for the government, is booze and gambling.
Okay.
Think about it. The Bronfmans, that's the only huge, major international, except our mining companies, but they don't work here because of reasons. And so what exactly are we supposed to do? See, Donald Trump, it's not about Canada. It's about Atlanticists, okay, along the eastern seaboard of the States and along the West Europe. They all get together, and even Mr. What the hell's his name? Carney. Oh, I'm a European. Oh.
Well, that's what it says in the attack ad. Yeah, that's what it says
what's
in the
her
attack
name?
ad.
Freeman. She owns an estate in Kiev, and she owns an estate in England, and she owns an estate in Canada. How do those people
Well, are
relate
they
to
estates
us?
or are they just very expensive homes? I mean, there's estates and then there's expensive homes. What I
Well,
want to
I'll
get
tell you
at is,
something. From my vantage point,
right?
Any one of those homes I would consider an estate.
Right.
right?
I know. But Donald Trump, originally when this threat was first made, too much illegal immigration, too much illegal drug trafficking, drug trafficking happening across the board. Canada's got to do something about this, and it's got to spend more on national defense. If we did that, we should probably do that anyway. But if we did that, do you think that the tariff threat would go away?
Well, there'd be other things that he'd demand.
Would there be other things? Exactly.
Of
Yeah.
course
Okay.
there
All
would.
right. Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Going to move along. Mike is on the line from Calgary. Hi, Mike. You're on the air. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Good morning.
You're welcome.
Trump on tariffs, he's going to use that leverage for the next 4 years, regardless of what Canada does.
Whatever we do. Okay.
Whatever we do. I mean, we do have to boost military spending, both on the NATO side and within northern Canada, because that's going to become a hot topic. Trump's interest in Greenland is just an example of the beginning of that. But tariffs, I mean, unfortunately, he's going to be launching a very expensive and a very interesting economics experiment, because I know we're going to get dumped on. I guess the smart move would be to put across the board 25% tariffs like he's been threatening, but then the next day start to suspend them on things like crude oil, auto parts, electricity, because otherwise it's going to turn into a massive disaster for both Canada and the States.
Right. But your message is get used to it. Get used to it. And it's a threat that's going to be here for the next 4 years. Gotcha. Thank you.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yes, it is great to be with you on a Monday. Trump and tariffs, still the big issue. Lots of people with lots of opinions on Donald Trump and his never-ending tariff threat. We're asking, what does he really want from Canada, from other countries, when he makes his threat about hitting Canada and other countries with tariffs? Is this going to be a never-ending thing with Donald Trump, say, for the next 4 years or however long he happens to be president of the United States? Let's get right back to our phones. There's one line available, 1-833-668-2577. Carl is in Halifax. Thanks for waiting, Carl. You're up next, Carl. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. I'm a dual citizen.
Okay.
It's been a long time, but Trump is cleaning up the mess. And so that's a good thing. The economy is going to do great. And with the tariffs and all that, all this does is bring everybody to the round table.
Okay.
We need to talk. We need to negotiate. Let's talk about everything. A couple months back, I called in. I crossed the border with 2 bags, huge duffel bags. I could have had anything in those bags, anything. And they didn't even search me when I came across the border. So this is what Donald Trump is talking about. Besides that, all these other issues, it is a massive problem with all the wars and everything going on. It is just incredible. So he's inheriting all these problems, right?
Right.
And I think he's going to do a good job. I don't agree with all his rhetoric and craziness.
Sure.
But he's getting the job done, and he's bringing everybody in the world to the round table. Let's talk turkey. And I think that's a good thing.
Okay, but when it first started, again, I circle back to this. It was well, we've got to do something about the border. Too much illegal immigration, the flow of illegal drugs. We've got to crack down on that, and Canada has to spend more on national defense. What if we did that? We should do that anyway. But what if we did that? Do you think the tariff threat goes away?
Well, it could.
It could?
He's not going to. He hasn't indicated that he's going to do it yet. But if he does, if we shut off all the electric from Ontario to the Midwest, all the electric to the New England states from Quebec, they're going to sing a different tune. So I already talked to high people in high places through my son, who is connected, to the White House and all that. And they're listening. They're saying, man, Imagine, we could freeze them out, and that's warfare. But I'm just saying, we have them over a barrel, too. To say we don't need Canada? No. And I looked up all the aluminum and everything. They have a lot of resources, too, in the States. And they outproduce us. They do, in every category. They do. Anyway, I'm against lithium mining in Nova Scotia anyway.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a conversation for another day. I don't even know how much lithium there is to be had in Nova Scotia, but thank you for your call from Halifax today, Carl. To Cambridge, Ontario, Paul, you're on the air. Hello, Paul.
How goes things with you today?
Everything is fine. A little windy, but as I said, I have my seatbelt on, so I shouldn't blow away. Go ahead.
That's a good thing. Listen, there is no way in hell that I want to become part of the U.S., but, I mean, there's always that but,
right?
There could be some advantages. One of the advantages that I could see is getting rid of the unelected Senate in the Canadian government. The news broke today. Trudeau plans to stack the Senate with all his unelected cronies that will be in power until they hit age 75.
It's pretty stacked with Liberals right now. There's only a dozen Conservatives up there right now, and no New Democrats.
Yeah, so, at least the U.S., they've got their problems and their government and whatnot, but they don't have an unelected body setting the rules for Canadians. There's a few other things that I see are good about the States, but all in all, I'm a Canadian and I want to stay Canadian. And as far as the Liberals recovering, you were asking when they got rid of Trudeau, could the Liberals recover? Well,
it's not just Trudeau; they're getting rid of Trudeau and the carbon tax, right?
Yeah. Okay, so a little while ago, I took a dump in the toilet and I flushed. It's gone and good riddance. Okay. I don't want it back.
Yeah, thanks for that visual, Paul. Come on, don't be so crude, man. Nobody needs to hear that. Okay, come on. Let's go to Wade in Sylvan Lake. Wade, hello, Wade.
Rob, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay, Wade. Yeah,
good. Well, I think your question is kind of open to every conspiracy theorist in this country to fill their boots.
I don't know.
And
I mean,
I would, if there was a question to be asked, I would like to ask: is a Trump a man of his word?
Okay. And why would you ask that?
I'm on X, and I got the little blue check mark, and just recently I got on there. Never been on there before. And so I mentioned to on Trump's X page there, or Twitter, or whatever you call it, I told him that with the exception of our premier here in Alberta, he has all the other premiers running around like teenagers with their hair on fire. And if he would do me a favor and hold off until April 1st, look in the camera at Canada and say, "April Fools," I would love to see the reaction.
Yeah. Okay. Well, April 1st, I'm wondering what's coming February 1st, because that's when he says Canada's going to get hit with a 25% tariff.
Well, yeah, but why they're wasting so much time on this whole tariff thing when nothing has even happened yet? Why don't they take the time to push Tyrant Trudeau out the door?
Well, he's got one foot out the door already. They're running to be his replacement.
Yeah, well, they need to push his other foot and his behind out.
Okay. Well, they're getting, I guess the Liberals are getting all their ducks lined up in a row, and that includes ditching the carbon tax. And one of the things I'm asking today, because there's polling that suggests the Liberals have bottomed out and their support is starting to grow now. And I'm just wondering, is that because Trudeau has got one foot out the door and the carbon tax has one foot in the grave? Feel free to weigh in on that when we come back to Talk Back. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been discussing Trump and and tariffs again today, and the prospect of a Liberal Party comeback with Justin Trudeau on his way out, that Liberals are going to try and run away from the carbon tax. They're trying that already. Could the Liberals make a comeback? Eric in Cole Harbour. Eric, you're on the air. Go ahead, Eric.
Hello, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, Eric. Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, good. I'm going to be brief and to the point.
Okay.
First of all, if the Liberals get back in, you have Carney. He's a disciple of the World Economic Forum. Now, I'm not going to get into a dissertation about it, but I suggest everybody read their mandate and their statement, which is up on their website. If that doesn't frighten you, well, then good luck to you. Now, as far as Trump, I don't think Trump is an existential threat to Canada. I believe that what he is going for is an economic union, and he wants to set up a new economic system where they have an external revenue service.
Right.
I think there'll be tariffs, but I don't think it'll be at 25%. Or if it did come in at 25%, he knows it's not advantageous for him to do that for all the reasons that people have stated. But honestly, Rob, I know we got to talk about Trump, but I'm telling you, I'm starting to believe there's such a thing as Trump derangement syndrome, because people have not kept quiet about Trump since 2016, and people should know ABC when he was running in 2016 put 75 reporters on him to dig up what they could about him to get him out of the race. So it's just one example. I don't venerate Donald Trump, but I want anybody to tell me what he has done wrong since he's been in office. He's ensured there'd be no more censors of censorship.
And David and I have talked about this. Are we going too far with our Trump coverage? We got to do another show on Trump. But we were also asking ourselves, well, what's bigger than this? Like, we could get hit with 25% tariffs that could really do some serious economic harm to Canada, maybe as soon as Saturday. So we have to talk about it. It's not that we're deranged.
Don't take me. No. Don't take me wrong, Rob. I'm not attacking you over your show.
No.
Like that. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying there's such a fixation on Trump. Now, if Trump is doing something clear and wrong, then he deserves to be criticized. If he's broken the law and then he's been sentenced, whatever, he has to serve that sentence if he has broken the law. But leave that up to the courts, right?
Okay.
But if you look at what he's doing in the States right now, the last thing I'll say, Rob, because I'm going to talk too much. The last thing I'll say, you look at the European Union. You put all their GDP together, it's about the same as the United States. That's Scandinavian countries and all that kind of stuff. They're quite capable of having their own armed forces. I served in NATO back in the 60s when it was in the Cold War. And the money that the Americans are spending maintaining bases in Germany and all over the world, and the other countries that they're protecting are having the economic benefit not only of the bases that are there, but also they're spending money where they could be spending it on their own people. So I really believe he's not wrong there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Eric. Bye-bye. Yeah, from Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia to High River, Alberta. Russ up next. Russ, you're on TalkBack. Go ahead, Russ.
Hey, well, I'm just listening. So, hey, the Trump thing, I don't know. We just got to wait and see what happens. I don't know. But what I'm more concerned about is the Liberals seeing the light. There's no more carbon tax. There's no more. And I was listening yesterday to Vashi on CTV, and she was interviewing. I think he's not the the resource minister, the Frenchman out of
the industry minister, Mr. Champagne.
Yes. Who, by the way, I really don't mind, but I see he saw the light. Now he says we're going to open up the resources. We're going to open up this. We're going to do that. And Vashi said to him, well, you could have done that years ago. And he says, well, that's history, and that's history. Times change. So they've seen the light. But if you listen to all of them very carefully, yes, they're going to cancel the carbon tax, but they're going to re-put it in under another name, or they're going to move it into the Clean Fuel Act. And if you listen to the Garbeau, he said, yes, they do, but he said that they are going to put a bigger cap on the oil industry. So how does that work when you have another minister saying, no, we're going to develop resources, and another one says we're going to cap it? So you know what, people, of all things, do not trust the Liberals. And you can go back as far as Chrétien.
I guess what I want to get at is, there are two big things that have been weighing down the Liberals. People don't like Justin Trudeau, and they don't like the carbon tax. If these things are gone, Could they make a comeback?
They're
Not for
going to
you.
improve a little bit
Not for you.
because they got rid of Trudeau. But I really think, I'm hoping Canadians are smarter and get them out altogether because they're all from the same mold, every one of them. You look at all of Carney's supporters, that's Trudeau's main supporters. And Butts is looking after his thing. So if people don't really look into what they got, you're going to end up with the same thing, only worse, because Carney's he's worse than Trudeau, if you can believe it. And if you don't
really? Okay.
You want to do a deep dive into England and ask why they got rid of him.
Yeah, well, I think, a lot of the stuff in the UK has to do with the fact that I don't think Carney was, a big fan of Brexit, and the people who are attacking Carney from the UK, they're big Brexiteers, right? They were pro-Brexit. You have to understand the context there. Thank you, though, Russ. Be right back. More of your calls. It's Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been talking about Trump. We've been talking about the possible liberal comeback, if there could be a liberal comeback in the making with Mr. Trudeau on the way out, maybe the carbon tax on the way out. Does that set the stage for any kind of liberal comeback? But let's go to Van in Halifax. Hello, Van. You're on the air. Hi there.
Hi, Rob. How are you today? I guess a little windy in Ottawa today?
It is indeed. We're under a snow squall warning. So, yeah, it's pretty windy around here today. Yeah.
I would like to talk about the proposed tariffs that Trump is talking about on February 1st.
Yes.
It appears to me that Trump, as a bully as he is just thumping his chest, and he's setting the table to negotiate for our natural resources and the water from Canada. I don't feel that the tariffs will actually, if he does impose them, I don't think they'll be long-lasting.
Okay. And when you say for our natural resources and our water, what does he want?
Well, he wants our natural resources at a discounted price, and he's starting the negotiations now and just setting the table as the upper hand.
Okay. Well, I mean, he's already getting our crude oil at a discounted price. I don't know about other commodities, for example. There's a lot of commodities besides oil and gas that we send to the United States, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And another.
So this idea, then, if I could just build on that, then, Van, this idea,
sure.
Well, you've got to do something about the border. You got to spend more on national defense. You think all that's just kind of a distraction kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't.
Or a pressure tactic or something?
With the border issue, I really don't know why it's Canada's responsibility to restrict what's going into the United States. I believe the Americans have their own border service.
Sure, of course they do. Yeah.
So I really don't know why that's our responsibility. In return, with the guns that come across the United States, have we said, beef up your side of the border as well?
Yeah, in fact, it's, the Canadian government that is trying to come up with a plan, trying to spend more money in order to, get tough on the smuggling of guns from the United States into Canada, right? Because that's our responsibility to try and keep that stuff out of the country and make sure they don't come across and into our country. Right?
The last time I traveled down to the States, I was met by American Immigration and Customs, not Canadian border services. So I'm just really confused why we are kowtowing to that.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Thank you so much for your call today. Really appreciate the call from Halifax. We will have to stop here, however, because if I bring somebody on right now, you'd only have about 30 seconds. Want to give you a little more time than that. First day back. for the week and all. Hour number 2 is coming up ahead. Don't forget, you can always listen to us online if we're not on the radio where you are. All 3 hours of this show is always available online on the Seeker app, Seekr. Seeker, Seekr. Just look for Now You Know with Rob Snow. The latest breaking news is coming up next, and then we're right back with more of your phone calls on Talkback on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. We have a few topics that are in the mix today. Donald Trump and tariffs. Saturday is February 1st. Could get tariffs in Canada as soon as February 1st, according to the latest threat from Donald Trump. But what does Donald Trump really want to see from Canada and other countries when he makes the threat to impose tariffs? That's what we've been kicking around today. And could the federal Liberals make a political comeback? Could they be competitive? I mean, competitive in the next election because of things like Justin Trudeau's resignation, to be a new leader, and because they might ditch a very unpopular policy like the carbon tax. 1-833-668-2577. Back to our phone lines. Stephen is up next in Calgary. Thanks for calling. Stephen, go ahead. You're on the air. Hello, Stephen. I don't think we have Stephen. Let's go to Barry is in Halifax. Hello, Barry. Hello, Barry.
Talk about is when everyone is against the carbon tax, I wish the candidates for prime minister would speak more about what they plan to replace it with. All the forest fires we've had here in last summer, and the major problem, as far as I'm concerned, is the global warming situation. So the carbon tax does serve a bit of a purpose because it discourages people from buying big, heavy automobiles and burning a lot of gas and so on, but there's got to be a replacement for it.
But does it, though? Does it act as a discouragement because of the rebate regime that the Liberals claim gives you more money back than you ever pay in carbon tax? So what kind of incentive is that? I never understood that because it certainly hasn't happened to me. And so I don't understand how, if they're adding the tax on, how they're giving it all back. But anyway, the concern, as I say, is the people that are against that, they've got to come up with something to replace it, because not so much tax, but whatever they're going to do to slow down this global warming. Right. We can't whatever they do with the carbon tax, you want to see, like a robust plan to deal with climate change, right? Exactly. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. I called you back, I think, a couple of months ago about the de Havilland 515, which is supposed to be the world's best water bomber, and they're making them right there in Calgary in Canada. Yes. Canada hasn't ordered any. Oh, really? Yeah, European countries, and everyone's putting in orders, but not Canada. Well, isn't that something? Okay, very interesting. But to the point, Barry, do you think Mr. Trudeau, let's face it, very unpopular carbon tax, an unpopular policy, given that both of these situations for the Liberals are being remedied in that they're going to have a new leader, and it looks like the carbon tax is on the way out, do you think that will rejuvenate the Liberals' fortunes in a place that's been very kind to the Liberals, like where you are? I certainly hope not. I was never a fan of Trudeau, and I'm not big on Liberal policies, but for other reasons, mainly the excess spending. And I don't even. At one time, you were quite aware of what the federal debt was, but you never hear tell of that anymore. It's all a ratio to GDP, and I think that's just covering up what the actual debt is. Okay. All right. Interesting. Thank you for your call today, Barry. Good to hear from you. To Cambridge, Ontario. Sean is in Cambridge. Hello, Sean.
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah,
good to hear from you.
Yeah, I want to talk about the possible Liberal comeback. I pretty much always voted conservative for PCs, but I have to admit, I do find Pierre Poilievre somewhat. I really don't like him, honestly.
You really don't like him? Okay, fair enough.
He just rubs me the wrong way. I find him very unsympathetic. And I was watching Mark Carney on the Jon Stewart show, so last week or so. And
yeah, about 2 weeks ago now. Yeah.
He comes across as very intelligent. He's quick on his feet. He's very personable. And with somebody like that at the helm, if not a complete comeback, they could make it uncomfortably close for the Conservatives.
Uncomfortably close, okay.
Because, quite honestly, he could walk rings around Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre is very good at, like when reporters have challenged him, he's been very good at putting them in their place, but I don't see him being capable of putting Mark Carney in his place. Mark Carney has faced down the Euro bankers. He's dealt with all kinds of crises. I don't see him being able to be bullied, quite honestly. So, yeah, it could be closer than they would like. And I think the Conservatives need somebody who's more personable in charge, quite frankly.
Well, I think it's a little too late for that now. I mean, it's not as though the Conservatives are going to, go and swap out their leader, especially where the Conservatives are in the polls. I mean, the average of all the polls has them at 45%. That's not when you're rallying around the leader. You're not looking to ditch the leader when he has your party at 45%, right?
No, it's not going to happen, but I'm just saying it could be surprisingly closer than what they were hoping for.
Okay, yeah, very, very interesting. You may be onto something there.
I'm going to put it all down to one man's personality, quite frankly.
Personality. Well, okay, yeah. Politics has a lot to do with personality, of course, especially in leader-driven politics that we have now in this country. Okay, talk back. Hour number 2. Love to hear from you. Some phone lines available there for you. Wait, won't be too long at all. Join the discussion. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we've been talking about a few things. Donald Trump, Canada, tariffs this Saturday, February 1st. That remains a huge story in this country. And do you think the Liberals could make a comeback, the federal Liberals, and be, surprisingly strong maybe in the next election because Justin Trudeau is on his way out, maybe because the carbon tax is on the way out? I mean, think about this. Gosh, how time flies. It was 1 week ago Donald Trump was sworn in as president of the United States, like a week ago and a couple of hours. And if you think back to last Monday, what was happening last Monday? We were all waiting for tariffs. When are the tariffs coming? Are the tariffs coming today? And remember, there was a big sigh of relief because it hit the news wires. Well, tariffs aren't coming on the first day, not part of the first wave of executive orders. And then the Canadian dollar rallied, and it even traded very briefly above 70 cents US on the currency market. But then later the same day, like Monday evening, Donald Trump was still signing executive orders, and he was asked by a news reporter, well, what about the tariffs on Canada and Mexico? When are they coming into effect? And that's when he said, well, we're thinking about February 1st, which again is this Saturday. And as soon as he said that, the Canadian dollar sold off on the currency market, and the loonie today trading around 69.5 cents US. Hasn't really moved in a week. And today's a pretty tough day for the stock market, particularly technology stocks. But tariffs, and Trump's love of tariffs, or at least the threat of tariffs, that has been the biggest Canadian news story for several weeks now, ever since he first threatened Canada with a 25% tariff across the board and started talking about making Canada the 51st state. If you want to avoid tariffs, they can always become a state. And we have heard from a number of you over many weeks now. Well, why doesn't Canada just do what Donald Trump wants us to do? Because we should be doing that stuff anyway. We should be spending more to tighten up the border. We should be cracking down on illegal immigration and the illegal flow of drugs. We should be doing that anyway, a lot of you said. And the Liberals tout this multi-billion-dollar program to better secure the border, but most of that money hasn't been spent, and in fact, there's no funding for it because Parliament has been prorogued. But a lot of you said, hey, look, Donald Trump wants us to stop being freeloaders on military spending, and and you agree we should be spending more on military spending. What we're trying to get at today is, let's say Canada did both of those things. Spent however much the country plans to spend on securing the border, and then you would be talking about tens of billions of dollars more to meet that 2% NATO target, like $30 to $40 billion more every year. Let's say Canada commits to doing that. Do you think the tariff threat goes away? Or do you think he would just come up with another reason to threaten Canada with tariffs? Because this is just his preferred method. This is what he sees as being his most effective tool against other countries. The tariff threat. Not so much imposing tariffs, but just threatening to impose tariffs. 1-833-668-2577. Sid in Calgary up next. Sid, thanks for calling. You're on the air. Go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, I think he's just making a threat, and he will come up with another reason. Even the Canada reach the NATO targets and increase the defense spending and increase the border security. Because if you remember the last time in the NAFTA negotiations, he wanted us to open our dairy market and to get rid of supply chain. And I believe that he wants this aviation market, airlines also to open up, because right now only the Canadian, it's supposed to be Canadian ownership is required to operate.
Majority ownership, yeah.
Yeah. So I think he wants American Airlines to operate inside the Canada and telecom sector. Even in the telecom sector, so it's a Canadian ownership is required. So I think he wants all these things. So that's why he's talking about making Canada as a 51st state, because he wants Canadian markets to open up for the American businesses. Like for dairy market, and for aviation, and for the airlines, and for the telecoms. So in those
and I would just add one more, maybe banking as well, because they're strict.
Banking,
ownership rules there as well. Financial services, right?
Financial services as well, right? So I think he's just making those threats just for negotiating the NAFTA once again to open up the Canada. And I think this time, we might give up. We might open up one of the sectors. And I think it's good for us also, especially the dairy one. We're paying huge prices on the dairy and even the airlines. We're paying a very expensive prices because of those monopoly and of this dairy farms and all. Just look at the price of the butter and the milk cans. So, yeah, it will be good for us, actually.
Right. Okay. So if we started to maybe dismantle some of these protected industries, we might make some headway with the Trump administration, do you think?
Yes, please. Yes, I strongly believe that. Yes.
Okay.
I think that's and instead of talking about dollar to dollar, if you talk about opening up these things, I think you can see that he will tone down his rhetoric of putting a tariffs, all these things, and same thing like about talking about the Liberals come back, and I think they do one or two photo ops of people sending people by planes, those things, and Mike Carney is a Bank of Canada. And a lot of people, they struggle with the home ownership. So he knows how to do that, play around with the numbers of the financial sector. He's coming from the financial background, right? He can do it for a lot of, for the newcomers. So I think then the Liberals can do a comeback if they sell these things.
Okay. I think there's still hope for the Liberals to make a comeback under a new leader like Mark Carney. Okay, interesting, Sid. Thank you. Calling from Calgary today. See how easy that was? 1-833-668-2577. Monday Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Been talking about the Trump tariff threat, the motivation behind that, and whether the Liberals can make a comeback. Maybe the comeback is already underway for the Liberals. Some political speculation today, which makes politics so much fun. I mean, you remember what Donald Trump said in the final few days of the U.S. presidential election campaign. I remember him at a campaign rally in Las Vegas, home stretch of that election campaign against Kamala Harris, and he was calling the word tariff the most beautiful word in the dictionary of words, because he suggested that he can make countries do whatever he wants them to do just by threatening other countries with tariffs. Now, I said to David, let's keep that clip handy. That might come in handy somewhere down the line. Let's listen to this here together.
Starting in January, we will give our companies the lowest taxes, the lowest energy costs, the lowest regulatory burdens, and free access to the best and biggest market anywhere on the planet, but only if they make their products here in America and hire American workers. Otherwise, they pay just like everybody else. And I say the most beautiful word in the entire dictionary of words is the word tariff. I love tariff. I can make anybody do anything through the use of tariffs. I can keep people out of war. I can keep us out of war. The word tariff is the most beautiful. I think I'll do this just so I don't get myself in trouble. I'm going to say the third most beautiful. Love and religion. And then the word tariff. Then the word tariff. I better do that, right, Vivek? I think I better say love is the most, and religion, they're the number 1, 2. You can switch them back and forth any way you want. This way I've just protected myself. But the third most beautiful word is the word tariff.
Tariff. He just loves that word. Tariff, and you hear it from him. I can make countries do whatever I want to do. I can keep countries out of war. All I need to do is threaten other countries with tariffs because they will not get access to the biggest market in the world, the most dynamic market in the world. So we have all of these Canadian politicians coming up with all kinds of plans to deal with Trump tariffs that could be coming as soon as Saturday. Secure the border, spend more on the military. Does that really matter? Does it really matter? I don't know. I'm putting it to you. Jonathan in Calgary. Hi, Jonathan. What do you think here, Jonathan?
Hi, good morning, Rob.
Hi, Jonathan.
Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I love your show. I love your show every day.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just want to give my opinion on the tariff. I believe it's coming. I believe it's really going to happen to us. Yeah, but there's a process on it. What I believe is in the U.S. they have this tariff authority that handles putting tariffs on every country, and they are basing that on the merit of the whatever basis they are in. But they should be around. It should go to the process, and even if the president elect wants to tariff on us, but it has to go through to the process. So I believe that's why it doesn't really materialize on the first day, but it will coming. I believe it will come as long as the process is done. And I believe he's using this. It's obvious that as a stick to get his to get things done of whatever he wants to do in a certain country.
Okay.
And
all right. Thank you for your call, sir. Thank you for your call. Back right after the news.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Trump and tariffs. We've been talking about that. We've also been talking about the federal Liberals, whether there's the potential there for a comeback for this beleaguered Liberal Party in Ottawa. Now that Justin Trudeau is leaving, sounds like the carbon tax is going to follow Justin Trudeau at the door. Could that be enough to lift the Liberals out of a 2-year polling slump? Because there have been a couple of polls in the last week or so that would seem to suggest that the Liberals may have just bottomed out. And not just that, they could be recovering some lost ground. But we'll just toss that out there. 1-833-668-2577. Let's get right back to the phones here on the Monday Talkback with Tom in Cambridge. Thanks for calling, Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
How you doing today, Rob?
I'm good, Tom. Thank you.
Good. Well, I think one of your callers said that it's the art of the negotiation or the art of the deal. I think, maybe we could open up some telecommunication deals here and maybe give us some better options when it comes to cell phone and internet services up here in Canada. It might be an option with regards to for the tariffs and stuff like that. But tariffs are going to come whether or not. And I guess Mr. Trump learned something on the weekend there when he sent a couple planes to, I think it was Colombia or Argentina. They sent them back, and he imposed tariffs on them, and they were imposed tariffs on him. So, it's going to be a dog chasing its tail, and we'll have to see how things shake out. Regarding the Liberals, you never know. With new leader, new direction, you never know.
Okay. Do you think the two front runners are in the Liberal leadership race are said to be Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland, but do the struggle for them, I think, will be for them to present themselves as true agents of change?
Well, I think Carney stands a better chance from a true agent of change because he wasn't part of the government when Mr. Trudeau introduced a lot of his policies and programs. Where Chrystia Freeland was the one really supporting them and backing them, which would be harder for her. And right now, as it shows, that Carney has more of the support from the Liberal Party. And again, it all depends on public opinion as well. But I think he does give everybody a better perspective as being he has some very practical and some logical experience in the financial sector.
Oh, sure. Serious chops there, no doubt. Used to worked at Goldman Sachs for a dozen years all over the world and then, headed two central banks, the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. Nobody's doubting that. But he's not running to be the governor of the Bank of England. He's, politics, and especially retail politics, could be a totally different beast than that.
I think he has an insight on how politics work when it comes to the financial market and what countries are. Like, I think you were right when you're saying it was the issue with Brexit over in England, and a lot of Brits wanted out of Brexit. They didn't want to be longer in that, but I guess the financial aspect, it was going to cost them too much to get out.
Well, plus it would he said it would harm the British economy, and by all accounts, it hasn't done great wonders for the UK economy.
No, it hasn't. So therefore, it sounded like a good idea at the time, but it hasn't really materialized to what they thought it was going to be. So with Canada here and with a new policy, a new insight.
Yeah.
And, maybe
part of the motivation for Brexit wasn't just, the economic ties and being part of an economic union. People in the UK weren't thrilled with, what they saw as, ceding some of their jurisdiction to another authority.
True. Right.
Like the EU Parliament, for example, and the fact that the EU has its own court and stuff like that. There were more issues than just economics.
The EU hasn't exactly, it's not a fan of some countries over there either. So,
but I think, Thank you, Tom. Very interesting thoughts that you raise today. And Tom, paying attention, it was wild to see what happened over the weekend between Colombia and the United States. I mean, they have this far left president in Colombia. He doesn't like Trump, and it sounds like the feeling is mutual, and the deportation of illegal immigrants is underway in the United States, and there were some planes carrying people back to Colombia. The president of Colombia wouldn't let those planes land because he didn't like the way those people were being treated. Some of them were shackled, for example, treated poorly, according to him. And out of nowhere, what happens? Tariffs. I'm going to hit you with tariffs. You're not going to let those planes land. We're going to hit you with a 25% tariff. And if you don't do what we want, we'll put it up to 50% next week. And then the leader of Colombia says, well, we'll do tariffs of our own. And then Marco Rubio, who is the new Secretary of State, orders to stop to visa applications for Colombian government officials and members of their families, and kind of drive the message home that the United States means business. And I guess sometime last night, everything got sorted out maybe the Colombian president had a change of heart, and basically they agreed to let the planes land, and that was that. And Colombia gets to avoid the tariffs. So, given what just happened there, we've been wondering, what does that mean in the Canadian context, where we've been talking about tariffs forever, for weeks on end now. Cynthia is in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Cynthia. You're on the line. Go ahead.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
So, it's funny you say that, because I think that one of the articles I read over the weekend was Danielle Smith saying, let's just give Trump a win, right? And I think she's not wrong, in my opinion, that he's just looking for us to play ball and do the things that he's asked us. And I kind of think about, when I think about tariffs, I go, okay, so what can we give him that's going to appease him? And I think if we do, even if it's the NATO spending, let's get it up to our, expected 2%. And then I was thinking, well, how do we fund that? Well, we fund that because we're not going to have the carbon tax anymore. We've got DEI that's on its way out. Let's not kid ourselves. And then we've also got how many people at the government are employed managing this carbon tax. Like, you have that number. I remember you talking about it.
Yeah, it's just shy of 500. Just shy of 500, yeah.
Exactly. This is ridiculous. We could take that money that we're spending in other places and put it to that one thing. And I think Trump just needs to see us play ball. And I like the way Danielle Smith said it, is let's give him a win. Right. And we'll probably, like the Colombia thing you were just talking about, he'll probably back off if he sees that we're willing to do what he wants. Yeah, that's what I think.
All right. Okay, Cynthia, thank you for sharing your opinion today on Talkback. More of your opinions, more of your calls just ahead before the top of the hour. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
On Trump and tariffs, which has been a hot issue again today on the Monday Talkback, let's go to Dave in Ayr, Ontario. Hello, Dave. You're on the air. What's your opinion, Dave?
I just wanted to say it's funny how history can repeat itself and we never learn from it.
Okay.
Who is going to be the Chamberlain coming back from Germany sitting there saying we have a deal? Doesn't it sound like expansionism by the American part?
Imperialism? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And also, well, you can become part of the United States as long as we get access to your minerals, oils, and raw products.
Well, make no mistake, they already have access to them. We're happy to sell them all of those raw materials.
To sell them, but not at their price, right?
Well, we're selling our oil at a deeply discounted. We're selling our oil at a discounted price to the United States. Yep. No mistake about that, because we're kind of captive to their market. And he's going to try and
drop that price even lower. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Trump is doing everything to make the United States great again, but it's again, you have to look at what cost. And he will probably make more enemies than friends out of this, even with threats. So, that's all that I can say is, who's going to be the Chamberlain? Is it Ford going to come back? And
so, I mean, are you suggesting, because people have suggested this, I mean, do you think he wants to take Canada? Take us over?
Well, why would you even say it if you didn't have the idea of it?
Like by force?
Is that, I don't think force. Well, yeah, if it came down, what happens, if we do get into a tariff war, what happens if it exceeds the tariffs? Where does it go? Where does it stop once it starts going?
Right. Okay.
They play with a slippery slope. And once you start going down, where's the brakes?
All right. Thank you for calling today, Dave, in Ayr, Ontario. Up next, Doug. Sorry, Doug. Up next. Doug's in Halifax.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Doug.
My call.
Yeah.
One of the things that I keep thinking about, and I never hear anybody talking about, is like, Trump telling us, we got to spend 2% of our GDP for military spending, and maybe now up to 5%. Correct me if I'm wrong, but all this money that we're spending on military, most of it we have to pay to the United States anyway. Like, we're buying these F-35s and any upgrades to our military itself. Am I wrong on that, or?
Well, the F-35s are an American fighter jet, and we're buying them, and we're going to spend a lot of money on them. It probably would have been better if we had bought those planes 10 years ago, but we are buying them. As for other pieces of military equipment, I mean the shipbuilding program is largely, that's a Canadian thing.
Yeah, the shipbuilding is
happening in your part of the country, as a matter of fact.
Exactly, right? I understand that part. But what about the the shells and bombs and stuff that are being put on these boats? They're not being made in Canada, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah, maybe they're made by arms manufacturers in the United States. I really don't know, sir, where
that's what I'm saying.
Where the armaments come from. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, even I think Australia and others are buying these F-35s, and everybody's buying it from the States because they have to coincide with NATO or something like that, isn't it? I'm not 100% sure.
Well, yeah, I mean that was always part of the idea of why we need to buy the F-35, because all of our NATO allies are also going to buy the F-35. Do we want to be the outlier, flying a jet that can't communicate with all our NATO allies in case we're in some kind of air conflict or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you. And another benefit to buying the F-35 was for the Canadian aerospace industry. That gave them access not only to do upgrades and provide parts and software and everything else just for the Canadian planes, but for the entire fleet of F-35s globally. That was always another benefit. It was going to be good for our aerospace industry. Thank you, Doug. In Halifax, we'll stop here. Charlie and Adam will get you on the air before the top of the hour, but we do have to stop here. You wouldn't have much time if I brought you on now. It's Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Adam in Calgary is up next, wants to talk about Trump and tariffs, another hot topic today. Go ahead, Adam. Hi there.
Hi. I think that people have a misunderstanding of what tariffs really are. Canadians are not going to be, or Americans are going to be more impacted than Canadians, in my opinion, simply because if tariffs are applied, they're not applied directly to the Canadian companies. It's being collected along the border when it comes in, and the importer is paying that additional cost, not Canadians. Sure, less are going to be imported from Canada to the United States, but ultimately what we need to be focusing on is selling it to another country, other countries rather than the United States, because if we go through this back and forth, ultimately we're going to be paying more for goods as well, because anything we tariff coming from the States is going to cost more.
Yeah, and the plan, we've heard it from the federal government, is dollar for dollar, and everything is on the table. That's what we hear from our leaders here, right?
And that doesn't benefit us. That doesn't benefit
I understand
us either.
That. Yeah. But there will be an economic impact on Canada. I mean, the estimate is just in the province of Ontario that a 25% across the board tariff could mean the loss of 500,000 jobs, which is basically
and
almost double the unemployment rate just in Ontario.
We need to look for another place to sell our goods. And if you think about it, really, what happens is when Canadian goods are not in the U.S. market anymore, what's going to happen is their cost of goods from obtaining it locally increases as well because of the high demand for local supply. So any Canadian lumber, Canadian steel that does not go into the United States is going to be cheaper for us. So we need to find another place in order to fill that gap in the market. But at the same time, the United States is short on goods because there's such increase on local demand. And so as a result, their cost is going to go up anyways. One way or another, their cost is increasing. It's not going to help them. And at some point, they're going to realize, and we need to back down and find somewhere else to sell our goods and let them play this little political game. And I think Canadians could come out of this with a better connection to a lot of other countries as well.
Right. Trade diversification. We need to diversify our trade markets, our markets for our goods. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's great. I guess just, one of the things that we've been thinking is, even if we did, and even some callers have said today, why is it so hard for Canada to just do whatever Donald Trump wants and put more money into border security, put more money into defense? I guess what we're asking is, what if we presented the perfect border plan, one that would be drawn up by Donald Trump himself, or promised to spend dramatically more on our military? Forget 2%, we're going to spend 5%, Mr. President. Would that be the end of the threats? Would that be the end of the threats? Right?
I think absolutely not. And we're not desperate, and we're not in a desperate place, and we shouldn't put ourselves in a desperate place.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Good to hear from you in Calgary. And to Charlie in Halifax. Charlie. Hi there, Charlie. Are you with me, Charlie? Hello, Charlie. No, I believe we lost Charlie, which is that's too bad. But a great discussion today on Donald Trump. Remember, February 1st, everyone. February 1st. Tariff. And I guess we'll see what happens on that day. And just on the other topic that a number of people called in about today, could the Liberals make a comeback now that Justin Trudeau is leaving and the carbon tax is soon to follow him out the door? Could that be enough to lift the Liberals out of their slump? We have pollsters in Canada right now running some of the better known polling companies. They're kind of going at each other on social media about what the latest numbers say about Liberal support, kind of post Trudeau and with the leadership underway. One thing to think about are a couple of numbers: 32% and 33%, 32% and 33%. Because in the last two federal elections, that's all the federal Liberals needed to stay in power with a minority government. In the last election in 2021, the Liberals won 160 seats, a little more than 32% of the vote. Conservative Party actually had 33% of the vote. Don't forget that. But they could only turn that because of vote efficiency into 119 seats. And in the election before that, Liberals had just 33% of the vote and yet managed to win 157 seats. The Conservatives, once again, had a greater percentage of the vote of 34%. Maybe as things stand right now, maybe Liberal thinking is, we just have to get to 32 or 33%, and we'll have another minority government. Surely the Democrats will join us again, because that will mean Poilievre's not the prime minister. Leave you with that thought today. The latest breaking news next.